It's Parenting Porcupines. I know it's Friday. It's not Saturday. It's been weeks since we've been live, but we're live now. So lucky you. Also, we're really concerned about the Delta variant and the coronavirus, COVID, and mask mandates and the crazy authoritarianism coming down from Washington. But none of those things are what we're talking about tonight because it's also the 20th anniversary of 9/11. So that's what we'll be talking about tonight. This is Parenting Porcupines, and we are the Libertarian Moms. This whole time we're talking, and then the minute the video starts, Melissa gets up and walks away. I was like, where is she going?
The glare of my overhead light was driving me insane.
Oh, it's too funny. All right. It is, in fact, the 20th anniversary of 9/11. We have show notes out on the blog. If you haven't been out there before, it's Libertarian. Oh, no, it's not Libertarian Mom. It's parentingporcupines.com. Let me throw that website up here real quick. And this is season 3 of Parenting Porcupines. Welcome back, Melissa. Welcome back, Jessica. So I'm Casey. I'm here in the Midlands in Columbia, South Carolina. I'm the chairperson of the Richland County Libertarian Party. Melissa is down in the Low Country and is a member of the Low Country. What is it? It's Charleston?
Yes, Charleston County Libertarian Party. I'm the state rep.
Ooh. State rep. Boom, boom. And
I Jessica, drive to Columbia tomorrow.
Yeah, I won't be here. I'll be at Clemson for the football game.
Oh, no.
And Jessica's up in Greenville. Jessica, introduce yourself.
I'm Jessica, and I'm the secretary of the Greenville County Libertarian Party. And then I also serve at the state level as the membership chair. So
that was your secretary. Good job, secretary. So we all have kids. We're all moms. We've been doing this for a while. This is season 3. And we took a break. We took a little hiatus for a few weeks. I launched a book, which is cool. If you're in the Greenville area on Sunday, hopefully I'll see Jessica on Sunday. We'll be at M. Judson Booksellers on Sunday to sell Casey's book. If you're looking for Casey's book, go to CaseyWhitener.com. You can find it. It's a novel. It is fiction.
Have you? Books.
I was going to say, have you read it yet, Melissa? Have you finished it?
I haven't. No.
Okay. So the first one was After December, which I know you both read that one. And the second one is Before Pittsburgh. Oh, look, I have a banner for that too. Little shameless self-promotion.
Almost like this was thought out.
So doing that on Sunday. Well, almost like I use this studio for other things besides Parenting Porcupines. What's that like? I don't know. It's like when you're watching Jeopardy or something and you see some like Wheel of Fortune paraphernalia in the background. You're like, oh, look at that. Must be the same studio. All right. So our episode tonight, though, is about 9/11. This is the 20th anniversary. And part of the reason I mentioned Before Pittsburgh is that the climax scene of the novel that I have released in August was 9/11. And as Gen Xers, we tend to be sort of hyper aware of 9/11, pay attention a little bit more to it, only because it was a very pivotal point from being kids, children, right? Innocence, so to speak, to all of a sudden you're grown-ups and you're just going to have to get over your own nonsense and move on with your lives. So for me, that was a pivotal point. And I know Jessica typically identifies as a millennial, but you're at that same age at that point where 9/11 becomes a pretty big deal for all of us and our personal growth and in our personal trajectories. So I mentioned to you guys that in both of my strategic management classes this week, I lectured on 9/11, partly because it's gratuitous that way. I'm a Gen Xer. I want to talk about it. I think it's a big deal. And partly because we had this idea that business is impacted by the world in which it operates. And so I wanted to take one of the approaches that we use in strategic management, which is the Pestle Analysis, and break it down category by category. So this is gonna get maybe a little nerdy, but I think it's a good way to talk about each piece at a time. But I thought we'd first start with the where were you stories. So let's go to Melissa and say, where were you on 9/11? What happened? How did you know this was occurring? Bring us into your world.
Oh, I was working. I was a receptionist at a manufacturing firm in Connecticut, and I got a panicked phone call from one of our buyers at Pratt and Whitney, and he sounded really weird, and he wanted to talk to his buyer or his purchasing agent that he always talked to. I put him through. 2 seconds later, the phone rang, and it was our purchasing guy at Electric Boat. And he just said, "Did you see what just happened?" No, I'm at work because it's 8:45 in the morning. I'm answering phones. I'm sitting in an office. He's like, "No, you need to go on the computer right now. Google like NBC, ABC, anybody." He's like, "It's insane. Put me through to, one of our engineers." So I turned on the computer. I'm like, "Oh shit." And we spent the rest of the day gathered around because no work got done that day.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was one of our guys from Electric Boat called and just said, "You have to turn on a TV."
What about you, Jess? Where were you?
I was in college. I was a sophomore in college, and I was getting up. I was working at a little jewelry store, and I was getting ready, and I had gotten out of the shower, and I went into my bedroom, and I turned on the radio, and I had a radio show that I listened to every morning, and they were talking about it, and I just thought, gosh, that's a horrible thing to joke about. And I turned off the radio and I finished getting ready because I was really mad. I was like, you don't joke about things like that. Like, I'm not listening to this morning. And then I got in the car and I listened to a CD and I got to work. And when I walked in the door, my boss was we had a little kitchen break room because it was a little tiny jewelry store. And she was sitting there with the TV on and she was watching it. And she was just like crying. And I saw it. And that's when, and I think it was right as the second plane hit the second tower. And it was just like a moment of complete and utter despair and disbelief. And disbelief. You just felt like it was something I can't even describe it. Like, it was just,
you're just stunned by it. I mean, I remember just being stunned by it. So I had this job I was a temp at a company that I didn't really care that much about. But I was doing like marketing work for them or whatever. And maybe there was potential here. I don't know. And I was late because I was often late. I was frequently late to this job. And on the way in, I was really interested in sports. I'd been a sports reporter before I got this job at the marketing company. And so I was listening to sports talk radio. Did you know Michael Jordan came out of retirement on September 11th?
No.
I didn't know that.
So that's what I was listening to on the way up to work. And I snuck in to the office. I parked and I kind of snuck in because I didn't want my boss to know I was late. And so I snuck in and tried to hide so he wouldn't know I was late. And he came over and he goes, "Did you hear what happened?" And I said, "Michael Jordan came out of retirement." And he goes, "No, a plane hit the World Trade Center." And I was like, "I'm sorry, what?" And then sure enough, like Jessica, we were pulled into the conference room where the only TV was, and we watched the events unfold on CNN for the rest of the morning. And I was doing stuff we were putting stickers on postcards we were mailing out. I took my work into the conference center, in the conference room, but I stayed in the room all day watching CNN as I was working. And as we saw the Pentagon happen, and as we saw the towers collapse, and as we saw Pennsylvania happen, all of that unfolding in real time on CNN. I remember that. I'll never forget it. And I remember driving home later that day, and this when we lived in Charlotte, and there being people already stationed on all of the overpasses with American flags. People who didn't know how else to process their grief except to go out there and display their patriotism. And I was even now thinking about it, I remember how I'll never forget that the whole way home, 7 different exits, there being on the overpasses American flags.
It's so funny that you say that. It's so funny that you say that because my boss, her name was Sheila, and she was, I guess she would have been a boomer. But her immediate response to the events was, "We're making American flag jewelry. We're red, white, and blue, clear out a case. We're doing it, And it's like you said, showing that the immediate response was to show patriotism and unity and country and such things.
Yeah, so let's talk about that because so as a Gen Xer, I grew up in like Reagan's America where patriotism was trendy. Everybody, we were all trying to beat the big bad, right? We're all trying to beat the communists. And we think of like the Olympics in 1984 in Los Angeles, and there's this huge sort of orgy of patriotism, right? And so you grow up, we were singing the grand old, it's a grand old flag in my third grade classroom every single day. So the patriotism was an evangelism when we were kids, right? You were in. Everybody was in. We were all sort of sold in. But by 2001, we've become disillusioned, maybe a little bit. We have the Clinton era. We lose a little respect for what happens in the White House. We get the contract with America and Newt Gingrich and this focus on the family, Christian coalition, weird sort of political value system politics. And all of us as grunge people, as Gen Xers are like, meh, we're really super cynical about this, right? And I remember being in my freshman year, it was sophomore year at Clemson, and probably was freshman year. And our political science professor said, what happened to our sense of community in this country? Why don't we all feel a sense of responsibility for each other anymore? Why don't we have this patriotism that persisted in the 60s and 70s? And I go, all we need is a good war. That'll bring us all back together. And 5 years later, the towers come down, right? So we were in a sense of, we were in some cynicism there in the late 90s, politically speaking anyway. How active were you, Melissa, in the 90s in politics? How interested were you? Did you care who the politicians were and what they were doing?
I paid attention. So 9/11 was a month before I turned 21. So I was pretty young in the 90s. I voted for, I want to say Ross Perot was my first presidential vote. Was that 98? No, 2000. I guess would have been the first year I voted.
Oh, you've been throwing your vote away for years.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No. Fuck them all. That's what I said.
That's awesome. What about you? So Jessica, were you aware of politics? Were you like engaged in politics before that point? I mean,
yeah, it was something that we always talked about. And actually my major in college, when I went to college, before I came home and went to paralegal school, I was actually a major in political science. So that's, I wanted to be in that, realm professionally, but it didn't work out. I came home and did other things, but yeah, I've always had an interest. In the late 90s, I was in high school, so I wasn't involved. There weren't really opportunities locally to plug in and get involved in my community at that time. So while I was interested and I was aware, I wasn't exactly educated on all of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. I grew up in a tiny little town. There was nothing. Yeah. Cows outnumbered people. So I listened to the radio. I listened to talk radio. That was my only outlet.
So I grew up in the suburbs of DC, and you couldn't escape politics. Like that was, everybody had a political opinion. Everybody was interested in politics. Everybody wanted to be in the game, right? And if you weren't in the game because you were too young to vote, then you were planning to get in the game at some point. You were going to run for office. You were going to be part of a campaign. You were going to join a party. You were going to that was the ambition in the area that I grew up in. You were expected to have an opinion, and you were expected to be part of that conversation when I was growing up in the 90s. We wanted to be more interested in our own personal drama, but my dad wouldn't let that. Like we'd go to dinner every night. My dad would be like, so did you hear what happened in the insert political drama here? And all of us would be like, sure. And he would go, he would give us like the 2-sentence summary, and he'd be like, what do you think about this? And then we all had to have an opinion, my sisters and I. So I grew up sort of being quizzed on that, like all the time at the dinner table every single night. So to me, like, I felt like, of course you're supposed to be involved in these, you're supposed to care about this. But then when Charlie said, did you have a fake ID so you could vote? I did not have a fake ID just so I could vote. Although that's a great Breakfast Club call out, Breakfast Club reference. But I do think, like, at the time, politics was not, it didn't seem to be that important, right? Like, there wasn't really anything major happening there. I felt like politically, things were really more local. They were more, I don't know, like, it seemed like corporations and marketing and celebrities all were more attractive. And I don't know if that was the culture or what, but after 9/11, it's like our politicians decided they had to save us. They had to lead. They had to fix things. They had to be in charge. They had to assert their authority. And I feel like we've been paying for that ever since.
Well, I have friends that don't pay attention to politics. They're like, they don't want to think about it. They have their own shit to deal with. Life is hard. They don't want to worry about that. And I would love to not have to worry about that. But they keep trying to dictate everything I do in my life. They will not leave me alone. So I have to care about what they're doing. They force me to pay attention because they're trying to dictate how I live my life.
But that's what I'm asking. Like, do you think, is it post 9/11 because we were suddenly of age and paying attention, or is it post 9/11 because there was this dramatic shift? Like, to me, I think before 9/11, everything was, we're sort of doing our thing. People are living their own lives. It's going to be fine. We're all sort of working. But then there was this massive, like, the big bad was back.
Grab. Yeah.
And we're afraid. And at any time you could die from a terrorist attack. All of a sudden, the day of 9/11, there's 1,000, 2,000 planes set to go into the sky that day. And 4 of them, four got hijacked.
Yeah.
So, and none since then.
Right. And so the percentages of you dying in a terrorist attack are no more realistic now than they were really back then, right? Like, but the fear is there. That's what I was telling my students this week. Like, it's the same with this pandemic conversation. The fear is there. And the purpose of the fear is to push you to do what they want you to do. And by they, I mean the politicians and the people in charge.
And it's the same with school shootings.
Yes.
When it happens, it's big news because it doesn't happen very often.
Right.
The percentages are teeny, teeny, tiny. Doesn't mean I don't get nervous sometimes sending my kid to school, but I'm irrational. And I realize that my brain knows my heart is irrational.
But it doesn't mean that you don't get nervous getting on a plane too, right? But in my rational brain, it's unlikely I'm going to be part of that experience, right?
Yes.
But the fear is very real, and the fear has been weaponized. I think since 9/11 more so, but maybe we only started noticing it since 9/11. All right, let's talk economics. Okay, so economically speaking, before 9/11, Charlie and I worked in restaurants in Charlotte in 2001. There were 22 servers on staff, and 18 of them had college degrees. So this is not a good economy.
Like, tech bubble. Tech bubble and burst, right?
Things were not going well. Yeah, like, it's post-tech bubble.
I've heard tech bubble burst.
Yes, it's post-tech bubble. And it's also like the airlines had already asked for a bailout before 9/11 even occurred. Like things were not great. There was this, like, really quiet recession happening in 2001. But then, of course, 9/11 happened, and we could blame all of the economic woes on 9/11. So, Jess, you were working around that time. Did you guys have customers? Was the business thriving? Were they hiring? Do you remember?
I mean, we had a pretty steady clientele. It was, like I said, a tiny jewelry shop in a tiny, sleepy southern town. So it wasn't a booming metropolis in and of itself. But yeah, I mean, I would say that Overall, it was probably okay. We stayed busy enough to keep the lights on, pay the staff. So
Isn't that all you really want, right? Like, isn't that all a small business really needs is enough income to keep the lights on and pay the staff? Melissa, you were working around 9/11?
Yes, I worked in manufacturing, and we had contracts with the Navy and the Air Force and Electric Boat and Pratt and Whitney. We were fine. Sikorsky. Yeah.
So
it was good for business.
I was going to say, then after 9/11.
Yeah, it was good for business. Because we
Yeah.
had government contracts.
Yep. Economically speaking, 9/11 was very good for the economy in terms of we took an initial dip, but then the shift to technology and military, the resulting wars that came after 9/11, all sent our economy into like record highs. Which makes you kind of wonder, right? Who was being Charlie said you were Melissa was fed by the war machine. That's okay.
I was. It's okay.
Look, the war machine put me through college, so it's fine. My dad is a military contractor, still is a military contractor that paid for my entire college tuition, so it's fine. But yeah, the idea that there's this military industrial complex that swells when we go to war, and so when we go to war, like we did after 9/11, anybody even remotely connected to that is going to be economically better off than they were before. What about Islam? I want to ask about the social impact of 9/11. If you guys are looking for the show notes, they're out on the blog. It's parentingporcupines.com. Put that up here right now. And then we're using this Pestle Analysis, which is like a weird pedagogy thing that I do a lot. So I've used this before. When we talk about fantasy world building on my writing show, we use the Pestle Analysis too. So if I'm like a little bit more familiar with it, because it's an easy way to like break down by category what the impact of things are, right? So, all right, so now we're on S of the Pestle Analysis, and S is social. Okay, so social is how did you relate to other people? So my first question is about Islam. What did you know about the religion of Islam before 9/11? And then my second question is going to be about country music, which seems to be completely different, but it's not. These things, weirdly, because of 9/11, become related. So let's start with you, Melissa. What did you know about Islam before 9/11?
Absolutely nothing. So, yeah.
Like most Americans.
In the country in Connecticut, my biggest interaction with Islam is at my job I was working in 2001. I stayed there till 2010, and I had kids and went home. But my boss for the second half of that, she was Muslim, and she was great. I loved her, and she was so pissed. Anytime anybody would talk about 9/11, she'd be like Christians when they talk about that idiotic church that like protests the gay funerals and
Westboro Baptist.
Yes, thank you. Anytime anybody would talk about 9/11, she's like Christians when people talk about Westboro Baptist. She's like, they don't understand. That is not us. Those are idiots on the fringe who went off the rails. And she absolutely hated that the majority of Americans associated her religion with those assholes.
Yeah.
So, and I understood being a Christian. I'm like, no, you see the worst in those people. That's not us. Please don't judge us like that.
Right.
Completely understandable.
So I just read this tweet today that said, Texas is not the Taliban. Texas is white men and the white women who support them. And you don't have to find a brown excuse to be angry with Texas. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, yeah, like white supremacy is a thing. And also these people in Texas are assholes, like bottom line, right?
Yeah.
Like, so you don't have to go out there and call them the Taliban. You can just call them assholes for being, you know, on that particular side of that conversation. So yeah, so I'm with you. And I have empathy for your boss who was Islamic, is a Muslim, and felt like people didn't understand their faith. And they were lumping her and her family and her religion together with the extremists, right? Jess, what about you? Did you have an understanding of Islam before 9/11?
Not a full, no. I mean, I had a very limited understanding of it because I took a class in high school and we briefly touched on all the different religions. And so I had some exposure to it, but it wasn't anything that I was like well read on. I couldn't tell you. And I can't tell you much more today. I know a little more because I know, you know, Muslim people. I have friends who are Muslim. And so I've, you know, learned a little bit more just through those friendships. But at the time, I knew enough to know that like not all of them were evil. You know,
Right.
like this is not the norm.
Which
So.
is honestly all you actually needed to know, right?
Yeah.
Like honestly, all you actually need to know was like,
Yeah.
this is not the norm. Like that legit, if most of Americans had felt that way, like if like 90% of Americans had gone, this is not the norm, then that's legit all you need to know. But that's not what happened. We saw this oversimplification of their religion, of their faith, and we saw a tremendous backlash and racism that showed up after 9/11, where people were angry and they didn't know how else to express that anger. They didn't have a way to channel that anger, and they directed it at innocent people who looked Muslim or were Muslim, right? Or practiced the Islamic faith. We saw mosques that were vandalized. We saw individuals verbally attacked and treated poorly. We saw people fired from their jobs because of their religion. They weren't trusted because of their religion in a country where the First Amendment specifically says that Congress shall make no law restricting the practice of religion. Everybody has a right to their own faith.
Here because the pilgrims came here because they were persecuted for their religion.
And even that, like even a step beyond that, even if it's not just your American, our Christian faith, if you're a Christian, your Christian faith says to you to love all people, love them all, right? And that's not at all what people were doing. My God. And in the name of
there are a lot of Christians who missed that episode of Sunday school.
Missed that episode. Yes, that's true. There are a lot of Christians who miss that episode or struggle with that tenet of their faith. Bless their hearts. I mean, it was absurd. But then we get Natalie Maines of the Dixie Chicks. They go to London. Do you guys remember this? Where the Dixie Chicks go to London and Natalie Maines says, we're embarrassed that the president of the United States is from Texas. I can't really blame her. And people lose their shit and they start burning their tickets in effigy. They start, just nonsense. Right before this happened, the Dixie Chicks were on a tour called the Top of the World Tour. They were the most successful female singing group of all time, not just in country music, but of all time, right? Like they were huge. And it was this crazy downward spiral. And there's a great documentary called Shut Up and Sing about this. If you haven't seen it before, I highly recommend it. And the Dixie Chicks all of a sudden went from hero to zero because country music turned on them in a big way. And the country music industry, the radio stations refused to play their music. Country music fans refused to go to concerts. They were burning their CDs. They called them whores. They called them sluts. They called them every possible bad name you can think of. There's a Entertainment Weekly cover with the three of them with their arms and legs painted with all the terrible things that people said about them. I mean, it was just the worst kind of cancel culture you've ever seen in your life. So, just for those people who think that cancel culture showed up after Black Lives Matter, that's not true. In fact, white people might have invented cancel culture. Specifically, white country music fans might have invented cancel culture because they gave it to the Dixie Chicks, and it was awful. I don't know if do you remember that? Were you guys Dixie Chicks fans?
Oh yeah, I remember that.
I was not. I listened to country music at that point, but I was not a Dixie Chicks fan.
I liked them. I liked them, but I didn't like them much after like the album with Earl. Earl Had to Die. I love that song. So, I don't know what that says about me.
Dixie Chicks song I know. Yes,
but for me,
Earl.
It wasn't really about that. But anyway,
yeah.
But so socially, then they get into this big feud with Toby Keith. Toby Keith sings the song. We have two 9/11 songs from country music that like stick out to me. Alan Jackson's song, which is "Where Were You When the World Stopped Turning." This is it's sad, right?
It's sad.
There's a grief to it. There's like every time I hear it, I just bawl, right? And then there's this
to it in our dance. We had a dance recital. Heavens to mercy.
I know. I was uncrossing my legs and I hit my cord and it like, woo.
No, we did a dance to it in our dance recital, probably 2003. And the song, just thinking about the song, I'm going to cry.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is a very somber.
It is really, really sad that way.
Yeah.
Charlie wanted to know if I'm shaming people that disagree with the Dixie Chicks. Yes, I am. I'm 100% shaming people who disagree with the Dixie Chicks because here's the thing. They have a right as well. They have liberty as well, and they can say what they want. They have free speech, and their opinion and how they feel about things is just as valid as how other people feel about things. They have a right to burn their tickets, dumb, and burn their CDs. That's fine too. I mean, all these things. You have
paid for them. You already paid for them.
Yeah. Right. But I mean, ultimately it's it is in fact cancel culture. Like that's 100% cancel culture. And so, yeah, just, you can be in cancel culture. Just own it. That's you. You're cancel culture. Yeah. So then the other song is a Toby Keith song. And Toby Keith goes out there and starts singing about how we're going to like punch people
in your ass.
It's the American way.
It's the American way. We're going to put a boot in your ass. It's the American way. And instead, we're supposed to be really proud about this. Like, we're going to come out. And I thought that was really interesting. And I thought it was interesting, too, that he started talking shit about the Dixie Chicks. And then the Dixie Chicks, Natalie went on stage wearing a T-shirt that said FUTK on it. And there was this, like, awesome feud between them, which was like, all of these are like social impacts of 9/11, right? Like there's not any reason for country music to create this like patriotism purity test. And yet that's exactly what happened. Like you're not American enough. If you're not with us, you're against us. You're not American enough. You're not patriotic enough. And I just thought that was really, I don't remember that being a thing before. Like, I don't remember people, if you didn't watch the Olympics, you're not American enough. If you didn't cheer for, Tracy Calkins in the swim events, you're not American enough. If you like, I don't remember that being a thing before, but all of a sudden after 9/11, like you've got to be a particular kind of American, and there's specific things you have to do to be a particular kind of American. If you're not that, then you're not American enough. And I don't remember that before that.
Yeah, I don't either.
Agree.
Blame the terrorists.
Yep. They fucked all this shit up.
Fucking terrorists. Fucking terrorist. But I know. I'm reading, like, all of these comments are coming from my husband. So I'm reading them all. Like, he's in the other room. He's like, I don't know. He might have been drinking for as long as I have been today. So, all right. That was social. So the social aspect after 9/11, things changed. There's the you're with us, you're against us mentality. There's the patriotism mentality. And patriotism got, I think, kind of weaponized after 9/11. And not only weaponized, but like the marketing side of patriotism became a really big deal. Do you guys remember the Budweiser commercial where the guy comes home? It premiered at the Super Bowl, where the guy comes home from war. He's a military guy, Army probably, and he comes home from war, and they give him the parade. His hometown comes out, and they're like giving a parade, like returning home from war. Do you remember this?
I vaguely remember that commercial.
Yeah.
Vaguely.
It was to sell beer, right? Like soldier comes
Shut
home
up and
from
give me
war. Clydesdales, like the town gives them a parade, mission accomplished, right? It's to sell beer. So like patriotism not only became like weaponized socially, but it also became weaponized in the market, where we started to see advertising that was specifically, if you're an American, you're going to drink this beer. If you're American, you're going to buy this car. If you're an American, you're going to ... right? And so it was really marketing, capitalizing on that patriotism that I guess had been stirred up after 9/11. Some of our Gen X cynicism is back, some of it. But we're all suckers for the patriotism fight. Like, I mean, we all are. Yeah. Oh, I know one more thing about that too. Do you guys remember where before 9/11 they didn't show the national anthem on television for sporting events?
I don't remember that.
Yeah, they didn't. So
we never watched sports in our house, so maybe that's why. Except NASCAR.
They didn't even show it at NASCAR races.
Yeah, really?
I don't remember.
No. So the pregame rituals, right? Like all those pregame things, they didn't show that anymore. That before. But what you would have is the TV commentators talking about what you can expect, right? Like what are the big matchups, blah blah blah. And the pregame, whatever's happening at the stadium, would be going on in the background. And after 9/11, they started showing the national anthem on all the games, and then it stopped again in 2018, 2019. 2020, when Colin Kaepernick started taking a knee, right? So like, we don't have to show the national anthem. It's not a big deal. We just won't put it on television. We won't give them the platform, but that's a whole other episode. But yeah, before that, it was a matter of saving time, giving time to advertisers, that kind of thing. But yeah, it was after 9/11, sporting events went back to showing the national anthem.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah. I know my kids in my strategic management class are like, they haven't always done that. I'm like, no, oh no.
It's crazy. It's crazy to me that there's I have yet to be able to accept that there is an entire generation of human beings who were not alive for 9/11. Like, I think about that and I just can't.
So long ago. I try to explain to my kids that we used to go to the airport and wait at the gate
for your people.
Yes, yeah. For my people. Yeah. We have videotapes. Videotapes from 1994 of us hanging out at the airport.
Yeah,
just running amok, being absolutely just.
And your kids are young, but like, I asked my students if they've seen Sleepless in Seattle, and they're like, yeah, we've seen. Of course, you like if you watch rom-coms, you've seen Sleepless in Seattle. Like you saw When Harry Met Sally, you saw Sleepless in Seattle. Like this is like a Nora Ephron college experience. You and your girlfriends all get together, you watch Sleepless in Seattle. They're like, yeah, we've seen that. Okay, so when Tom Hanks is greeting his girlfriend at the gate, and he actually sees Meg Ryan walk by. He's at the gate. He's inside security. He does not have a ticket.
They just let you wander.
Not meant to be there. They just let you walk right in there like that. Like the security and on the airlines was up to the airlines. It was the planes themselves, the airlines themselves were who governed security. And after 9/11, the federal government came in and said, you can't be trusted. We will cover security.
We're going to handle this. They do a very good job.
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh. I mean, well, in their defense, we haven't had another 9/11. But I mean, seriously, if you're a criminal mastermind, why would you do that? Right? Like that's already been done. So guess what? I'm going to steal the moon. I'm not going to try to hijack a plane. But but you're right.
And just like that, we are now on every watch list.
Despicable Me.
Every watch list we were not already on. We are now on. Thanks to this episode.
We're really on a watch list because stealing the moon's not a thing.
Have you not seen Despicable Me?
If we are on a watch list, those people need to see Despicable Me. Because it's a cartoon. But that's the thing is like, I don't, it's hard to know the efficacy of the TSA when nothing like that has happened again, right? Like you can't prove prevention. You can't prove not, right? Like you can't say, well, we haven't had these problems and it's because we put these efforts in place. Yeah, but
every
is
time
it
they're tested, they fail. 90% of the time they fail.
Yeah.
They let everything through except my husband's after sun ointment.
I once lost
that they find. The actual bombs and the actual weapons, they don't find.
I once lost a brand new bottle of lotion from Bath and Body Works, and I deserved it. $20, chuck it in the trash. And then this other time, my mom and my daughter and I were traveling, and I'd forgotten that I had a wine tool in my bag. And the guy pulled it out, and he goes, "Would you like to take this back to your car?" And I was like, "Are you fucking kidding? It's $5. I bought it at Target. Throw it away. I've got to go. We're gonna miss our plane." I was not legitimately trying to hijack the plane with that. It was stuck in there on accident. Throw that shit away. I don't care.
It's the airline's fault for charging $30 each way for a checked bag.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's all I gotta say.
I mean, what's really funny about that is like they lost the privilege of doing security, right? Of doing security. And then they started charging us so much for bags that like we put that much more on the TSA. So, all of these things, they're just terrible. They're all terrible outcomes of 9/11. Goddamn terrorists. Okay, so technology. Here's the other thing. I want to bring this up on technology. So the technological advances since 9/11 are staggering, right? And part of that's it's just been 20 years. That's part of it. But the other part of it is like technology ran amok, right? Surveillance, cameras, digital footprint, audio. Like, do you guys remember talking to people where when you heard that the NSA was going to be tapping our phones, remember when we first got cell phones, it was like, oh, the NSA can listen to your conversations, blah, blah. I don't know. I'm not sure entirely who your crowd was when you heard this, but like my crowd was like, well, I'm not saying anything wrong, so it's fine.
That's what Lindsey Graham said. Lindsey Graham.
If you're not doing anything wrong,
I'm not
you don't have anything to worry about.
I don't care that they're listening to my conversations. Absolutely, Lindsey fucking Graham got in front of Congress and said that.
Ooh, yeah, Charlie just put Patriot Act. Woo! The Patriot Act. Like,
the problem with you're not doing anything wrong today, but tomorrow they can redefine what wrong is.
Yep, I was going to say that. And all of a sudden,
you're a criminal.
Yeah. Well, I think Lindsey Graham, more than anything, was trying to pretend like whatever conversations he was having were on the up and up. And let's be honest, that's not true. So, but here's the thing: more than anything, it doesn't matter if you're doing anything wrong. It still doesn't give people the right to listen to what you're saying. Yeah. Like, it does not matter. So, like right now, we're here, we're live, we're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, right? Like, we are intentionally putting ourselves out there. What we say right now can be held against us, blah, blah, blah. We get it. Your phone conversations from one person to the other are
Should be
not
private.
that. They're supposed to be between you and the individual that accepts that call. And we trust that our phone companies are able to do that. And the idea that our government can come in and say, well, if you're not a criminal, then that's fine. Or if you haven't done anything wrong, or if we don't have suspicion of you, like all those ifs. I don't want any of the ifs. I want to know that if I have a conversation with a person that I believe to be secure, that conversation is secure. It could be about anything, and it doesn't matter because it should still be secure.
There's an
And
amendment about
Go
that,
ahead.
right?
Yeah.
Is there an amendment in the Constitution about that?
There might be. It might be right in there. It might be. It might be right in the Constitution. So to that point too, I think the idea that people believe that because I'm not doing anything wrong, I don't mind that they do this.
Yeah, that drives me nuts.
That's
the struggle.
They came for this group and it wasn't me, so I didn't care. And then they came for this group and it wasn't me, so I didn't care. Now they're coming for me and there's no one around.
Right.
I'm butchering the quote. Sorry.
Right. But we get the
it's
point
the
because you're
concept.
exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And people wait until it's them before they get frustrated by it or they get angry by it or they feel
Before
like
they
it's
realize it's
injustice.
important. Yeah,
Yeah.
they don't realize it's important until it applies to them, and then then they're surprised. It's like, well, we've been telling you this was going to happen for
20 years.
So we also had some really good tech. There's also some really good tech that came out of 9/11. So we do have, sadly, war generates this kind of really good tech. So we have battlefield technology, we have security technology, we have not into facial recognition and those other kinds of surveillance crap, but like we have Kevlar, right? We have body armor. We have things that were developed, that were purchased, that were created to be commercially used for the battlefield, and now they're available for individuals and for private use, private citizen use. All of these things are good things. Medical technology on the battlefield, that's good too. But at the same time, it's a big trade-off, right? Like, let's go to war for 20 years so that we'll have technology. Do we need to go to war to get technology? Probably not. Is it the fastest way? Probably yes, right? We've seen that again and again and again. Certainly after World War II. I mean, my Jeep is a product of World War II technology. So, bam. But then, every war has that, right? So there's Charlie mentioned drones, right? There's a lot of technology that comes out because of war that becomes advantageous for the rest of us. But there's also a lot of technology that comes out of war that is less advantageous or puts us at further risk. Melissa, you're in that industry. What do you think? Should we be okay with the technology that comes out of it, or should we be like terribly scared?
I mean that's good, but my thought is if they got government out of things like the medical industry, they could develop these things on their own without the need for war. Because the market would take the place. But
I would say that's a novel thought. Well, for some,
but that's just me.
It probably is.
Well, and would there have been a market for it if it didn't have the backing of the military, right? Like, so for example, when you build a new product and you put the product out there and you create some case studies around it and you go, hey, here's this new product I have and some people like it and like you guys should give it a try. When the military adopts it for 1,000 different implementations, right? That's a pretty big case study versus like I'm having to go out there and convince 1,000 different people to use my product. So there's a huge advantage for government contractors who have the opportunity to put their product in front of that many users. And I think without getting like too like business nerdy about it, I do think that war perpetuates businesses, creates businesses, makes successful businesses that don't necessarily, we didn't need them. We didn't need them. And if they had been tested in a non-war market, we wouldn't have adopted them. And they're just here, and they're only here to stay for as long as, maybe even until the war peters out. So, all right. So we got to the end of our show notes here on our Pestle analysis. We've gone more than 45 minutes, but I want to answer some of the questions that Jessica added. As we look at the end of the Afghanistan war, I love this question.
What it says.
How did you feel as you watched the end of the shit show? And I got to believe the shit show refers to the Afghanistan war, a fruitless endeavor with a price tag of over $2 billion and an even greater cost of thousands of lives. All that only to recklessly abandon thousands more who relied upon our resources for safety and security. How did you feel as you watched the end of the shit show? So this was a pretty emotional couple of weeks. 2 weeks ago, last week, this week. Jess, start us off here. How did you feel?
I was furious. I was furious that we created this problem. We created this need for these people, and then we just left. I think that it could have been done differently, more efficiently, more effectively. I was very angry. Because it certainly isn't our responsibility to take care of the Afghan people. But when we have created that reliance again for that security and that safety, knowing that the Taliban taking over could endanger all these people who have helped us, we have a responsibility, right? We have a responsibility as neighbors, as people, as human beings, to help them. And the fact that we pulled our military out first, and it was just like, it just made me so mad. I was angry. I was very angry. Very angry.
Yeah. What about you, Melissa?
Oh yeah, I agree. I don't know. I'm going to say a word, strategist.
Strategery.
A strategist? A military strategist?
Yes,
Okay.
I'm not a military strategist.
Strategist.
But I
like that better.
This could have been done a better way. I absolutely agree. We should stop being there. We're not doing anything. The country needs to learn. We've been there long enough. But it was absolutely on us to leave them in a position to defend themselves. We've been there for 20 years. What the fuck have we been doing if not preparing them for us leaving? Mm-hmm. We failed to prepare them, and we failed to have a plan to get out in a graceful and, I don't know, a way that works.
Yeah. No, I agree with both of you completely. And I think the blame doesn't necessarily lie on the Biden administration.
It's on everybody. All of them.
It belongs with whoever. We went in there in the first place, right? We went in there in the first place with a particular plan to do a particular thing. And that plan is what should have been executed. And that plan should have had an exit strategy. We're going to be here for 5 years. We're going to do these things. And then we're out. Like we're in there and we're out. And then whatever shows up that tries to keep us in there and drag us in there, like those things need to say, we need a new plan that explains how we're going to divest. Like that divestiture, that get out plan always needed to have been there. And that, I feel like it wasn't there from the beginning, or if it was there in the beginning, it was never believed that we were ever going to actually do that. And so we had a repeat of Vietnam. The images that we saw side by side of exiting Saigon and exiting Kabul they're
Really?
heartbreaking.
Yeah.
They're infuriating, certainly, but heartbreaking too, because you think we're supposed to know better. But let's be honest, right? Like as Gen X, maybe millennial, like we know the boomers
Millennial.
don't know shit about learning from history. We know that. We know for a fact that they don't believe that anything that happened before is relevant now. We get that. Like we know there's an entire generation that's been in charge for 40 years that does not give a fuck about history and that does not think that what's happening right now has ever happened before. Like they believe that their own experience is brand new. This is brand new. We've never done anything like this. That's bullshit. It's bullshit. And it's always
human nature.
it's always been bullshit. And they just don't get it. Like every time I have a conversation with anybody that's like, well, this is not the same as it's exactly the same.
Yeah.
It's
It is.
exactly the fucking same. And the fact
It
that
is.
you can't see that is arrogance and it's hubris and it's nauseating.
Exactly my point.
It is
Yep.
just, it's unreal to me. It's unreal. Although I'll give Charlie this. We're not the first suckers to be taken in by Afghanistan. And that's
It's
true. The
Only
Russians went in.
2,000 years.
The Russians went in there first. They got fucked. We went in there second. We got fucked. And now we think China should go. Get on in there, China. Afghanistan is yours. Y'all should just swoop right in. What we really believe should happen now is China should set their sights on Afghanistan and get on up in that shit. And we will all think that's the right thing to do. Go for it, China. Go for it, China. We're rooting for you. All right.
Let us have
now I got a little
space.
silly.
Let us have space. You can have Afghanistan.
Yeah, Lord, let us have space. I don't know. There's some aliens out there. I'm pretty sure are going to kick our ass.
This is why they won't talk to us.
All right. So
This is why they don't want anything to do with us.
have you seen some of the things on 60 Minutes lately about like all the different close encounters and how they're like showing up and then they're like, it seems to be like they're gathering data and then they're leaving and whatever. And like all these different military people are like, yeah, I saw one too. Like there's a bunch of people. Have you not seen this on 60 Minutes?
No.
The last time that we watched it, Charlie and I were like, all of this seems totally true. It all seems true that other advanced species would show up here and be like, yeah, fuck that. And bam.
That is exactly what is happening. It's like when you drive through the really bad part of town. You're like, kids, roll up your windows, lock your doors. Like, that's what the aliens are doing as they're driving by Earth. They're like, kids, roll up your windows, lock the doors, don't feed the animals.
Yes, exactly that. Yes, all day long. All right. We're 57 minutes into this, and like, as much as I'm enjoying you guys, I feel like we can keep enjoying each other without being on the internet live doing it. So
it's probably best for everybody. For all
probably
parties
best
involved.
for everybody that we end our special 9/11 edition.
I can't figure out where we can. It's Friday night.
I mean, Fridays might be a problem for us moving forward. All right, so it is football season, though. If you're looking for us on Saturdays, you're probably not going to find us. It's probably going to be on a Friday night. But we'll do the best we can to make sure we let you guys know ahead of time. If not, I hope you enjoy the recordings. I hope you'll stick with the show. We've still got, this is just now episode 9 or 10 of season 3. So we've still got episode 9. So we've still got 6 episodes to go. We're going to go all the way through episode 15 of this season and take a break over the holidays. So thanks for coming back. Thanks for being with us on our special 9/11 conversation around this. You can get the show notes out on the blog. It's parentingporcupines.com. It's Melissa. It's Casey. It's Jess. Thank you guys for being with us.
Hi,
this has
y'all.
been fun. I missed you guys.
I know. It's been a long time.
It's been a while. All right. We'll be back next week. We'll see y'all then.